When the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863, it declared all enslaved people in Confederate states free. However, for landowners in Texas, the reality was very different. Texas was geographically isolated and had limited Union military presence, making it a haven for slave owners determined to maintain their power and labor force. News of emancipation traveled slowly, often by word of mouth or unreliable messengers, creating a fog of uncertainty. Many landowners relied on this poor information flow to justify delaying freedom for their slaves. Some genuinely claimed ignorance, while others actively suppressed the news, fearing economic ruin and social upheaval. Misinformation was widespread, with rumors circulating that emancipation would be overturned or that Texas was exempt from the proclamation. Slave owners exploited this uncertainty, insisting on business as usual until Union troops arrived to enforce the law. It wasn't until June 19, 1865, over 2 years later, that General Granger's announcement in Galveston finally brought formal emancipation to Texas, ending a chapter defined by calculated delays, misinformation, and communication barriers. As landowners and slave owners in Texas during the 1860s, our livelihoods depended heavily on the labor of enslaved people. When President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it technically freed enslaved individuals in Confederate states. However, Texas was remote and largely untouched by Union troops, allowing us to maintain the status quo for an extended period. News traveled slowly, but many of us were well aware of the proclamation. We had strong financial incentives to keep this information from our slaves. Cotton and other crops required intensive labor, and freeing the enslaved workforce would have meant economic ruin for many estates. We also feared social upheaval and the loss of our traditional way of life. Some even relocated to Texas from other parts of the South, hoping to escape Union oversight and prolong slavery's existence. It wasn't until June 19, 1865, when Union General Granger arrived in Galveston with federal troops, that we were finally forced to comply. Until then, we withheld freedom to protect our interests, hoping the war's outcome might somehow reverse our losses and preserve the system we depended on.
They said freedom had come, but on the Texas soil where I was born, freedom was only a whisper carried on the wind. We rose before dawn, hands raw from cotton, backs bent beneath the sun, not knowing the world outside had changed. They say the proclamation had been signed, but no writer brought the news to us. No letter, no word passed between the rows. The overseers watched us close, sharper than ever, like they feared the truth might slip from their own lips. We wondered at the silence. Some nights, we gathered and prayed, hoping the Lord would send a sign. My mama sang hymns low, her voice trembling with hope and doubt. Every sunrise brought more work, more waiting. The days bled together in sweat and quiet suffering. Then, on a June morning, soldiers rode in, blue coats glinting. They read aloud, "We had been free for years." I saw men drop their tools, women clutch their children, tears streaming. My mama fell to her knees, hands lifted to the sky. Juneteenth was not just a day. It's the memory of stolen years, the moment hope turned real. We remember, because freedom denied is a wound that never heals. Imagine learning that you were supposed to be free years ago. For enslaved people in Texas, this was their reality on June 19, 1865, when Union troops arrived to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been signed 2.5 years earlier. Slaveholders in Texas kept the news hidden, exploiting black labor for as long as possible. When freedom finally came, it was met with celebration and questions. What about the years lost, the families torn apart, the wages never paid? Despite promises of justice, freed people in Texas received no land, no financial compensation, and no government support to rebuild lives stolen from them. The famous phrase, 40 acres and a mule, became a broken promise. Many were forced into exploitative labor contracts, sharecropping, or bonded by debt, trapping them in cycles of poverty. Communities rallied together, building schools and churches from scratch, demanding dignity and rights. But the government's refusal to compensate for lost years left deep scars, economic, social, and generational. The legacy of those broken promises shapes lives even today. My grandmother's voice would fill the porch as dusk settled, her stories woven with the sounds of cicadas and the scent of red velvet cake cooling in the kitchen. She'd gather us close, her hands resting on faded photos, faces of relatives who once stood uncertain, learning of their freedom years after it was won. Juneteenth wasn't just a date on the calendar for her. It was the hush of elders' voices, the bittersweet laughter over shared meals, the gospel records spinning hope and resilience. She'd say, "We made a holiday from heartbreak, because nobody else would." For generations, we honored Juneteenth quietly, in backyards, church basements, and community halls, passing down recipes, songs, and memories. Our joy was soft but defiant, a celebration of survival, dignity, and unbroken spirit. When the world finally recognized Juneteenth as a national holiday, I felt her pride echo through me, a deep and lasting connection. But I remember, before the parades, proclamations, and celebrations, there was silence. There was a promise to remember, to celebrate, and to never let go. That's the legacy my grandmother gave me.